What's up, metal and heavy music fans? It's Flight of Icarus again with MetalTrenches.com. As always, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed, and hop down in the description to follow us on social media or support us on Patreon and Subscribestar. But it is time for another recommendation roundup, and this time I've got 4 new albums that you are not going to want to miss from the last couple of weeks. So let's dive right into it. Alright, first and foremost, we've got black metal, blackened death metal group Tragedians TRONE with their self-titled effort via Osmos Productions. I'd recommend Tragedians TRONE to fans of Deathspell Omega, Emptiness, and later career Behemoth. I've got to say, this debut is another nice cross-section of some of my favorite releases from the last few years, really. There are especially notable comparisons to be made in overall atmosphere to, again, Deathspell Omega, what with these slinking guitars and very prophetic sounding vocals. I'm also feeling undeniable The Satanist vibes on Cold Depths of Solitude and Avgrun's Marge.
Damn you! You get him the easy ones!
However the fuck you pronounce it. There are straight up moments on that latter track Anywheres where I could swear it's Nurgle himself on the microphone. Meanwhile, the doomier Stygian fluke bears familiarity to Emptiness is Nothing But the Whole, one of my favorite albums from the past few years, whereas Raging Opener Entrance brings with it some glimmers of Uada. And I don't mean to make this simply an extended FFO list, but when all these elements come together so well, so perfectly, it really is worthy of mention. Furthermore, I love that they went with a less is more philosophy on this album. At just 34 minutes, it really allows every second to shine all the brighter. I'd like to see the band further individualize their sound in the future, but even so, black metal and black and death metal fans should find plenty here to really sink their teeth into. Alright, next up we've got returning band ESTUARINE with their new EP, Wisdom of Silenus. This is a Florida self-described brutal avant-garde metal entity, following up one of my favorite albums of 2018 with this new underground effort. I'd recommend them to fans of Dendritic Arbor, Balance Interruption, and Black Harvest. And I've got to start by saying ESTUARINE does not give a fuck when it comes to genre boundaries. Dude is constantly bulldozing right through them. Black metal, technical death metal, crust, sludge, even blues are all fair game when it comes to Wisdom of Silenus. The opening track, Human Gratification, provides an excellent overview of this variety, kicking off with noisy, grindy riffing before transitioning to a very punky D-beat break, and then once more into a mournful, almost doomy sounding outro. Rapturous Overload is my personal favorite on the EP, delivering some high-octane, mathy death metal, again in the vein of Dendritic Arbor. Loving that sporadic-sounding drumming, and I think I hear like subtle church bells in the background too, and it's like just there enough that it really piques your interest, and it adds an extra layer of kind of like horror and anxiety and fear to it. And as if that wasn't enough, Life's Incessant Toil changes gears yet again with a very bluesy guitar hook, guiding us through otherwise highly macabre terrain. So once again, ESTUARINE really bringing it as a newer project and probably one of the best EPs you'll hear this year. It certainly stands out as a unique entity, and this project just continues to impress me with its highly eclectic musical approach that has a very distinct personality and is very consistently engaging. Alright, shifting back into black metal territory with British string-infused black metal trio Dawn Raid and their new album Behold Sedition Plainsong via Prosthetic Records. I'd recommend Dawn Raid to fans of A Forest of Stars, Moon Sorrow, and Graveworm. And as a huge fan of A Forest of Stars, I am such a sucker when it comes to utilizing strings within the black metal genre. If you feel the same, Dawn Raid should be right up your alley, and you should move them right up to the top of your list of new bands to check out. If you take that same ethereal, melodious approach to compositions, but add a heaping dose of more traditional black metal vocals, you end up with one of the most haunting albums you're going to hear this year. Behold Sedition Plainsong is an absolute wonder of balance when it comes to mixing the ugly and the beautiful. You've got folky acoustic guitars and sorrowful violins perfectly offsetting the icy cold production and grim howls of rebellion. This ended up being a surprise for me in a year that just hasn't really wowed me with too many really fantastic black metal releases. Don't get me wrong, I'm a big black metal fan, and there have been those albums this year that I really enjoyed, but just not a lot of stuff that I even considered for like, is this like year-end material? But this one, I would absolutely consider putting it on that list. So yeah, definitely check it out. All right, and last but not least, we've got kind of a bonus here since I usually just cover 3 albums, but it's another EP. This is Sydney, Australia metalcore quartet Together in Tragedy, dropping an explosive, genty new EP called Delirium. I'd recommend Together in Tragedy to fans of Cabal, Dayseeker, and Suicide Silence. If you're considering metalcore as kind of a spectrum to like your more catchy, highly melodic, more kind of post-hardcore tinged groups, and then your more death metal, melodic death metal influenced groups, they're definitely like right over here, right before jumping that line exactly. They're straddling it just perfectly. And their music is just so consistently dark and highly aggressive. No clean vocals, no catchy melodic choruses. Not that I don't like that stuff. I actually quite love it, but I'm also a sucker for just like fist to face, really aggressive metalcore music. And that's what you're going to get with this EP. The vocals are bitter and disdainful. They seem to just like grab you by the throat and just squeeze. And it's just, it's fantastic. It's a pretty short EP, but I just was spinning it over and over and over, just banging my head harder and harder every time. The riffs rival even Meshuggah, I would say, at times in their deep resonations. You've got these really highly infectious grooves rattling the bass and the guitars alike. I'm particularly fond of the track Spineless, which combines all of those already pretty engaging elements with also some kind of spooky, very Korn sounding guitar effects on the leads. And in those moments, it kind of reminds me of Suicide Silence's The Black Crown. So yeah, all in all, there's quite a bit to enjoy when it comes to Delirium. I kind of went into it with low expectations. I enjoyed what I heard from just sampling it enough that I wanted to review it. But each time I listened to it, I was just more and more into it, and it stands out. Like, that's something that's really important to me, especially in these more bloated genres where all these bands kind of sound the same. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's still plenty of sort of by the numbers elements that you've heard time and time again, but they also throw in kind of their own little special sauce and mix things up just enough that I could pick them up out of a lineup. It was interesting. So definitely give this one a listen if you're into highly aggro metalcore and deathcore that maybe also spawns a little bit from the new metal generation, which I myself admit to be a part of. Nothing wrong with that. So yeah, give it a listen. And that'll do it for this recommendation roundup. If you want to check out those bands, those albums, links to all of them are down in the description, again, along with all of our social media. You can find us everywhere. And let me say, we've got a lot of videos up right now, too. We've got everything from more of these recommendation roundups to retrospectives on bands that changed my life. We've got the podcast where I interview a lot of interesting bands in long form. So stick around and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And take it a step further by supporting us on Patreon or Subscribestar. Even just $1 a month makes a huge difference in helping me cover the overhead cost in hosting the podcast, hosting the website, all that good stuff. But for now, this is Flight of Icarus, signing off. I will see you in the trenches.